Well, thank you everybody for joining us for tonight's webinar, Searching and Applying for Scholarships. I'm Greg Berry, Assistant Director in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Just a quick note, since we're virtual, please excuse any technical issues or if something may seem out of place. Now, before we begin, I want to go ahead and launch a poll for you. We want to know a little bit more about today's audience. Which of the following best describes you or your student, depending on your situation? Are they currently in high school and looking ahead toward their experience in college? Maybe they're getting ready to transfer to UAB from someplace else, or you're currently a student at UAB and want help finding more scholarship opportunities. I'm going to go ahead and leave that poll up for a few moments so you can have a chance to submit which option best describes your status. Tonight's webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website tomorrow. This evening, we have the opportunity to ask questions to better understand where you can find scholarships and what may be available to you. While we have questions ready for Kathleen and Margaret, I'd like to invite you to place any question you may have throughout the evening in the chat at any time. We will make sure that we get those answered. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now. Currently in high school, we have a majority of those students, 2/3 of our audience has that kind of student. About 25% are looking at current UAB students and 11% are transferring in. At this time, I would like to introduce tonight's guests. First is Kathleen Stallings. Kathleen is Director of Admissions in the UAB Office of Undergraduate Admissions. She joined the Blazer family back in 2016. Kathleen earned her Bachelor of Arts from Furman University and Master of Public Administration from the University of Georgia. Next is Margaret Whiteside. Margaret is an Assistant Director of Engagement, Alumni, and Students in the UAB Office of Alumni Affairs. She's been at the university since last year. Margaret earned her Bachelor of Science from the University of the South. So at this time, I would like to start tonight's discussion, and we'll start with the questions. I'm going to begin with, okay, so the student hasn't received an official notification from UAB regarding their admission. Can they still apply for scholarships? And we're going to start with you, Kathleen.
So in order to apply for UAB sponsored scholarships, a student must be admitted and have a Blazer ID. But you can still search available scholarships in the database, in our BSmart database, prior to admission. So you can gather the information, use the search function in BSmart, but you cannot apply until you are admitted and have your Blazer ID activated.
And Kathleen, we'll stick with you, and then we'll segue to Margaret, because the answer for the next question is going to be different for both. Where do I start? Where do I really start looking for the scholarships? Because that's, in the end, that's what people want to know.
Sure. So you have to take a multi-pronged approach. Starting with the institution is ideal. So going to uab.edu/bsmart, BSMART. Those are all of our institutional awards for incoming students, for current students. Everyone is housed in BSmart. And that's how you begin your search. You can search for keywords. You can search for majors. And I would say also thinking about what the student is involved with, knowing that we have a majority of current high school students. I always encourage students to have a powwow with their parents and think about all of the connections they have in their current community. For example, I was the president of my high school Key Club, and I found out about an opportunity sponsored by the Kiwanis Club of Macon, Georgia, and I applied for a scholarship. And all I had to do was tell the scholarship offerer, grantor, the address of my school that I was attending. That was it. Once I was awarded the scholarship, all they needed was an address, and they took care of all of the details beyond that point. We do have a separate Office of Undergraduate Scholarships at UAB. It is a close friend of admissions, but a separate office. And so when you're thinking about other opportunities, qualifying for outside opportunities and receiving those monies for school at UAB, it's the Office of Undergraduate Scholarships that's going to handle that, or it's going to facilitate those awards. But I'd say there are some general websites to check out, but it's really about making a map, a family meeting about what your community connections are, service organizations, church affiliations. There are some much broader search engines, fastweb.com, scholarships.com, going to College Board, which sponsors the SAT, NRCCUA, which creates the ACT. There are all kinds of databases that are available online, but that's a huge cattle call. So really starting as specific as possible with the university itself and the offerings there, and then moving on to other connections with the high school, with the church, and with the community at whole.
And Margaret, that extension involves our office with the UAB Office of Alumni Affairs. Where can people start? Where can the students start for those scholarships?
Definitely. The best place to start is alumni.uab.edu/scholarships. That's kind of our landing page for everything scholarship related. It's got frequently asked questions, descriptions of scholarships. It breaks them down by if you're a freshman, an undergrad, a graduate, or if you fit into another category. A lot of our scholarships you apply through BSmart, but we do have a good number that you apply to through our website. And a lot of those don't get viewed as much as we would like. So take a good deep dive through our website. There's specific ones for schools, ones for community service, ones for international students. There's pretty much something for everyone. So make sure you take some time, spend there, and with BSmart and our website.
And as they're going through all of the scholarships on either location or even other locations, how many can they apply for? Margaret?
All of them.
As many applications as you want to fill out, we will take them.
Absolutely. I'd say that the most important thing are deadlines. So you can apply all day long, and I would recommend getting a calendar separate to a school calendar for college deadlines, right? And that includes scholarship deadlines. So for a student senior year, they'll have their busy schedule in high school, but they also need a schedule of dates and deadlines for their college search. And that includes scholarship deadlines, and they differ from school to school, from scholarship opportunity to opportunity. It is so very important because scholarship deadlines are hard. They're hard and fast. And that is probably the number one hang up I see, is just preparedness for the multiple deadlines that come along with applying for various scholarship opportunities.
And as they're navigating things, we already said they have to be admitted into UAB. Do they have to have already filled out a FAFSA to get the scholarship? And if they haven't filled out a FAFSA yet, can they still?
Okay. The first part of your question is, it depends. So it all depends on what the scholarship grantor is looking for. If they are indicating financial need as an element of the scholarship, as an element of the qualifications, then yes, a FAFSA will be required to be on file. If need is not denoted or required in the scholarship opportunity description, a FAFSA is not required. And your second question, FAFSAs can be submitted all year round. So there is never a deadline. There are priority deadlines for getting a financial aid award for a certain academic year. The FAFSA is always available to be filled out.
And Margaret, I'll start with you in this next one, and then I'll go back to Kathleen. Do I have to log in to access the online scholarship form?
So if you're applying through BSmart, yes, you will need your Blazer ID and password to get going with the general application. If you're applying through the NAS website, you do not. You do need your Blazer ID and password, and you do need to use your UAB email address. So it depends on which opportunities you're looking at.
Kathleen, anything to elaborate on?
Same. You need to be admitted and have your Blazer ID activated. That's a very slight change from years past. If you have students that have come before in the admissions process than your current student in high school, Blazer IDs are no longer created by the student. They are now created by UAB, and activated by the student. So it's a slight change in language, but no difference than what Margaret explained.
Even though I will be receiving financial aid in the upcoming year, can I still be awarded scholarships?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It all depends on the source of the funding. So the donor designation or the source of those funds at a university level. Like I mentioned regarding submitting a FAFSA indicating or showing from the FAFSA results that you have need. There are some scholarship funds that require that, and there are some that do not. And it's a matter of being in line with the donor's wishes and the description and the intent of the scholarship fund.
So Margaret, students may want to apply for as many scholarships as possible. We already established you can do that.
Yes.
Are there different applications for each one?
So general answer is yes. If you start in Be Smart and do the general application, that will determine if you match with any other opportunities departmentally through the National Alumni Society, those specific special ones. It will kind of prompt you to follow up on those scholarships and let you know what you need to do in order to complete that application. If you are applying for one of our scholarships that's not done through Be Smart, you will need to do a separate application for each of those scholarships. They don't vary a great deal except for some of the supplemental information that is required, which can be a letter of intent, a brief personal statement, what the scholarship would mean to you, letters of recommendation, that type of thing. So back to the deadlines, it always is good to know what you have in your deadline. If you've got to get a letter of recommendation from a teacher, they appreciate a little more lead time than you just sitting down to fill out a basic application. So dig through each of them, figure out which ones you want to apply for, and then kind of work backwards from that date. But yes, most of them do have separate applications.
So it's not a one-stop shop. Is there any easy way to maneuver things, Kathleen, especially since Be Smart is such a ginormous wealth of scholarship opportunities?
Yes. So when you apply through Be Smart, all students submit a general application. It's important to note that current students must do that as well every year. So every start of the academic year, when you're looking towards the next fall, you can apply for additional scholarships using the Be Smart portal. You must have a current general application on file. And that is kind of the front door of scholarships. Some scholarships only require the general application, and some scholarships ask for additional information beyond that. The only thing that's required from the general application is a 250-word prompt personal essay. There is an opportunity for students to upload recommendation letters and a resume, but they are not required. But that general application must be completed to be considered for scholarships. It just happens to be that first step. And if there are more requirements beyond that, the student will see that in the various opportunities in Be Smart once they get past that front door.
So you mentioned kind of about the essay and writing a certain number of words. What should be included in the essay, and should they tailor the essay towards each specific scholarship so you don't have just one? You might have 10 different essays. Okay,
so I'd love to hear Margaret's answer. For Be Smart, there's only one essay for the general application, and there's only one prompt. And the basic gist of the prompt is, tell us about yourself, about something that would not be obvious from what you look like on paper. So tell us something about yourself that's beyond your resume or your transcripts. Now, absolutely, when you talk about a broad scholarship search, your essay should be tailored to the different opportunities. But for the general application, it must be the same. It's the same for everyone.
Margaret, how about for the National Alumni Society?
I think definitely tailoring is the way to go. The majority of our scholarships are endowed by alums or in honor of alums who did something amazing for UAB. And, I don't think it would hurt to do a little research on the person, see what they did, why they made a difference, why someone thought it was necessary to make a scholarship in their honor. Some of them are specific to the impact you're having on campus while you're there. Some of them are in your community, what you've done. So taking a little time to think about it and tailor it to that shows it's not just, a blanket essay. The selection committee, who is usually tied to the person being honored, can tell that you've spent a little more time on it, and that'll separate you from the bunch if it's a big pool of applicants. So, do a little more research, spend a little more time. It may take a little longer, but could be worth it in the end.
Now, we talked a little bit about that you can apply for as many scholarships as you want. Can you be awarded more than one?
Absolutely. So for UAB's purpose, when you think about a student account, all of the student charges come into one big bucket, as I like to describe it. Now, there are some scholarships that you have to be cognizant of that are specifically designated for a certain use. So a book scholarship or a housing scholarship. But generally speaking, those awards that are coming through BSmart are going to be just towards the student's balance. So when you think about bringing in money, either from a merit-based award or an alumni, a scholarship, or an outside party, they all get applied to your account and stacked. There are very few instances where an award is not stackable, but it's very clear in the wording in BSmart that that's not the case, but the vast majority stack and they just go towards your student balance unless very specifically noted in the scholarship description that it is for housing or for books, etc.
All right, you mentioned stacking. How much can a student stack? I mean, can they be in the positive and be having a little extra spending cash at the end of the semester?
Yes, there are times when that happens, and it really just depends on the donor's wishes. And I'm more knowledgeable about the merit-based scholarships. So some merit-based scholarships might get you to full tuition, but that doesn't mean that they cover books. Well, you buy books out of pocket. So it's very likely in some of our high achievers that are stacking scholarships, they would get a refund check and use that check to purchase books. Now, if they needed to justify that purchase to be a direct expense of college, then they could do that by telling a donor, thank you so much. I used this amount for the purchase of my first semester books. And it really just depends on where the money is coming from and if it is restricted in any way.
All right, so here's a question from one of our audience members. What are scholarship boards looking for when applying for scholarships as a UAB student? They're in their sophomore year and they're finding some scholarships are just limited. So what are the panels looking for with the submissions?
That's a good question. I think if you can find one that fits what you're doing on campus, whether it's specific to your major, your college, or your involvement in student activities or community-wise volunteer work, anything like that, spend some time looking through, searching through BSmart, looking through our website, and find those that even though they're limited, they may be specific to what you're doing and not apply to as many people, if that helps.
And I think that kind of goes off of what Kathleen said a few minutes ago, where show your uniqueness, show what sets you apart from the rest. Am I following that correct, Kathleen?
Absolutely. And this applies to college admissions as well. UAB attracts some really wonderful students and done some really interesting things. Unfortunately, we have all been through a pandemic, right? And all of our current high school students have also lived through a pandemic. So an essay about like thriving in a pandemic is not unique, unfortunately. So it's important to highlight those things that are unique to the student, those different projects. I'm most interested in an essay that can hone in on one experience or one special project or one class. That's what's most interesting to me, if they can relate it to a scholarship opportunity versus saying very, very broad strokes of this is how I have, achieved my dreams, right? That's so big. You could never do that in one essay. You could never get all your thoughts on paper in one essay. But if you focus in on a very interesting piece of that puzzle, I think it's compelling for the scholarship committee.
And to kind of go along with that, I'll just share a personal story real quick. My daughter, she is going to school with the end result of wanting to become a physical therapist. Her scholarship application should focus on a knee injury she had as a junior because it's her story and it sets her apart from everybody else. So if you have those unique little tidbits, those are great ones to include. We got another viewer question. I'm assuming the general application is part of the admissions process. Once you're admitted, is this application already in place or is there another step that they have to take?
Great question. It is not automatic. It is not automatic. So students are admitted and then are encouraged to complete the BSmart general application, but they must take action. And it's a very simple general application, but it's on the student to take action and complete the BSmart general application. And that's really the bare minimum that they need to be doing, right? Because there are other steps beyond that to take advantage of the resources that we have available. And I would even venture to say we have scholarships that go unawarded each year because of the lack of applicants that fit particular parameters. But the bare minimum after you're admitted is filling out the general application.
Questions are slowly starting to roll in, so great to see those. Keep those coming. Another viewer says, I'm assuming the general application, and I just read that one, so I'm going to mark that as a chat and bring that down. What I meant to ask was, due to it being close to the end of the school year, are scholarship options still open? And Margaret, are the alumni scholarships still open?
They are still open. They are open until March 25th, so a good almost 6 weeks. We have a couple that are awarded in the fall that are for international students, but the majority of them are March 25th, either through BSmart or through our website. So you still have plenty of time for those opportunities. Kathleen can speak maybe to the other ones, but yes, there is still time.
Actually, today, February 15th is the first deadline that I think I've seen in BSmart. They range from February 15th to May 1. So you really have to be cognizant of the different deadlines. For admissions, you must be admitted by March 1st to be considered for a merit-based scholarship, but that also requires your action in BSmart. So the admission must come by March 1st, and you also must complete the general application.
I know, just because I work with the National Alumni Society, that there is a lump deadline for the majority of the scholarships. Is there a lump deadline? You mentioned today is kind of the first day and it goes through May 1st, but is there one that people should be looking in and go, oh no, I really have to get it in by X date? No. Okay.
No, I would say March 1st. Just because beyond that, if you're not admitted, then you don't get considered.
So that means we have 2 weeks basically from today, 13 days from today before March 1st. So that's when scholarships, for the most part, you want to have things in, or at least the ball rolling for a lot of them. So how does somebody qualify for merit-based scholarships? And because somebody asked, what's the minimal ACT score for a merit-based scholarship?
Okay, so UAB, because we are requiring the general application that requires the essay, we are doing a more holistic review, but scholarships range for in-state students from $2,000 a year to $10,000 a year. There is not an exact matrix of if you have this GPA and this test score, you get this amount of money, but looking at a strong GPA above a 3.75 and a 20 or higher on the ACT, it is very likely that a student will be awarded something.
So when it comes to the scholarships, do all scholarships require an interview with an individual or panel? I'll start with you, Margaret.
No, not all of them do. Several of ours, the donor does want to interview the students, get to know them, learn more about them, meet them virtually, in person, depending on what's happening in the world. A lot of ours are just decided on by selection committees, so there's not always an interview, but yes, there is that option for some of them.
And Kathleen, with so many scholarships available through BSmart and other sources, what do you see? Do a lot of them require an interview, or are a lot of them just, all right, we're going to award them?
Generally, just like Margaret indicated, those that have a donor, those that have a person attached to the funding, typically do require an interview. But the institutional awards are typically not going to require an interview. Major specific awards, those, once you declare a major you can qualify for, typically it's about your academic performance.
And keep those questions coming in for Kathleen and Margaret. So are merit-based scholarships closed to students beyond their freshman year? Basically, for example, the presidential scholarship.
So for merit-based scholarships that come from the Office of Admissions, those are awarded on a 4-year basis. Once you get awarded that as an incoming freshman, you get 4 years, 8 allotments for 2 semesters each year, and that's guaranteed. For transfer students, when you are awarded upon admission, you get 4 allotments, 2 years of a transfer scholarship. There are merit awards that come from departments that could start, as I would say, as soon as sophomore year for a student. But with regards to the overarching, university merit-based awards, those start at enrollment freshman year or as a transfer student, and then are guaranteed for either 4 years or 2 years for transfer students.
Are they straight up guaranteed, or do you have to meet a certain threshold with GPA, or does it depend?
That's a great question. It depends, but typically it's a GPA requirement, but the GPA requirement is not as high as the initial award GPA, if that helps. So we understand that college is different than high school. So there is a minimum GPA to maintain, but it's not as high as the original GPA requirement.
Margaret, I'm going to put you on the spot on this one. You haven't gone through the scholarship interview process, but any tips, because you've been in the seat and I'm sure you can provide something, any tips on navigating interviews once you've applied and you're in front of that panel and that donor?
Yeah, I'd say be yourself. Come prepared. Be ready to talk about yourself, but not, too much. Explain who you are, why this means something to you, the difference it would make in your time at UAB, what you can bring to UAB, why this scholarship appealed to you, caught your eye, what about it resonated with you. I think main thing is being yourself, just being ready to answer the questions, but also showing who you are and why you're an asset to the UAB community.
Kathleen, anything to add on the interview process?
Well, it's just like a job interview. You want to make sure that you're listening to the question and answering the question that's posed, right? So we're nervous when we interview for scholarships or interview for jobs, and you might have those kind of prepackaged statements that you want to share with the committee. But I would encourage you, for those that I have sat on those scholarship panels, it's so much more interesting when you know that the interviewee is engaged in what is actually happening in the moment and they are responding to the actual question that's being asked, rather than trying to fit their answer they've already constructed into a pre-existing question.
So basically, don't try to memorize a question or an answer. Be yourself. Be relaxed. Yeah. So besides BSmart, and Kathleen, this is probably more geared towards you. Besides BSmart and the alumni scholarships, are there any other sources of scholarships to look at, such as scholarships.com? Where else can they find things?
Yes, FastWeb, scholarships, as I mentioned in the first portion, College Board which is the home of SAT, NRCCUA, which is the home of ACT, looking at these different services that provide information to students. They're going to be providing scholarship information. It's not just about your ACT score or your SAT score. These are meant to be resources for students. And of course, it's daunting because you're casting a really wide net. And in that sense, when you're working with a scholarship search engine like scholarships.com or like FastWeb, it's so very important to be intentional about your filters. Filter it down to geography, filter it down to major, filter it down to, I have green eyes and I'm from Bibb County, Georgia, because it could very well be the case that there are scholarship opportunities. And I will say on Be Smart, we have found some of the awards we've had to go to the donor and ask to expand a little bit because they are asking for very specific students. I want to see a student from my hometown that had my major. I'm making this up, but we've seen similar scenarios where we've gone back and said, well, do you think you can widen it a little bit? And let me tell you why. And the donor has said, oh, I get it. Yes, let's widen that search a little bit. But it's also incumbent upon the searcher to kind of be self-aware as to what they're applying for.
And to kind of put that in perspective, I just Googled scholarships for college freshmen, and I got 23,700,000 results. So there's a lot out there, and you do have to narrow it down. So how can you tell if a scholarship from a source outside UAB is actually legitimate?
Sure. Never, ever, ever pay for scholarship information. Ever. It is out there. It is free. It is there for the taking. And that is a huge red flag. I would say that any scholarship that's attached to an organization, a reputable organization, thinking about the Kiwanis Club, thinking about the Red Cross, an organization that you can search on Google and find has a real website and real people that work there, that's going to be legit. But also, I'd say those personal connections, local banks have scholarships and have local boards that decide on those local scholarships. So when you're thinking about these, a 23 million hit Google search, that's not going to yield nearly as much as a connection with your community's local bank that might have local scholarships for its local students. So it really is kind of a numbers game.
So Margaret, are more scholarships available for undergrad students than for graduate students, mainly in the Office of Alumni Affairs?
I'd say it's about equal. We definitely have specific ones for freshmen and ones for undergrad, but there are a good number of graduate ones. Some of them change year to year depending on not necessarily the donor, but who it's honoring. But there are options, and there are also ones specifically for international students. So you just have to take some time to look through the listings. But yes, there are options.
Kathleen, I assume it's the same overall with admissions, that there's plenty available for both.
Yes, and like I mentioned earlier, as students declare a major and have that major in Banner in our system as their declared major, that opens up other opportunities. So if they are to search in Be Smart is connected to Banner. They talk to each other. And so the system knows if you have a certain declared major. And when you log in, the system will tell you, oh, hi, Margaret. You're a music major, and here are the opportunities available to all sophomore music majors. And it'll give you those opportunities. So the fact that Banner talks to the Be Smart system is important for upperclassmen or those that aren't freshmen, because there are additional opportunities, especially as you get more specific. And it could also come down to student involvement. So when you're an incoming freshman, you're not involved on campus. But as you move through your time in college, you're more involved, and maybe your student organization has a scholarship. And so being plugged in that manner is also beneficial in a scholarship sense.
And I know as you go through college, you're going to have those interactions with others on campus. So when it comes time, and even with high schoolers coming in, who should they ask to write their letter of recommendation if the scholarship asks for a letter of recommendation. Margaret.
I'd say start with a favorite teacher, professor, a mentor, someone, your boss you worked for, someone who knows you well in different facets. If you've babysat for a family for 15 years and they trust you with their children, something like that can speak to you being a good person, well-rounded, not just in school. So also tailoring it toward which scholarship you're applying for. If it's a community service-based one, I would look into one of the groups you volunteer with. If it's a church one, go to someone in that realm. So again, with your interview preparing, look to the details of the scholarship and make sure that whoever's writing it knows the scholarship is based on this. Can you highlight that I did X, Y, and Z? And teachers write a lot of recommendations. If you can help them and say, I did this in this year and this set me apart, anything like that, give them a little cheat sheet. You're not writing it for them, but it gives them enough, background to make it a very persuasive argument for you.
Basically, you're looking for that personal connection. Is that pretty much right, Kathleen?
Absolutely. We can tell.
Yes.
We can tell when it's not personal. And I would also add, I think Margaret's exactly right. I would add that the relationship with the individual is so much more important than that individual's title. So I myself can't speak to, the student workers that work in the admissions office, but their manager who reports to me can, right? And I think that she would have so much more value to put in a recommendation letter for a student worker that was submitting for a scholarship than I could, even though our titles are different. I would not be able to add that nuance and add the special little stories that she could. So it's much more about details and about that connection with the student. And teachers also use form letters. So I think Margaret's exactly right about little cheat sheet about what you want to include it and making sure the recommender understands what the scholarship is for, because we can see a form letter from a mile away.
And if anybody does have questions, keep them coming. We still have some time to get these questions answered. This is your time to ask these questions. So what are your chances? What are the students' chances of actually receiving a scholarship? Obviously, merit-based scholarships, they're locked in because they're at certain thresholds with what they've done in high school. But what are the odds? I mean,
okay,
should we go to Vegas and roll the dice?
So I can't speak to Margaret. I want to hear Margaret's answer. But for merit awards, there is no cap. If the student qualifies, they will get it. And so it is not a zero-sum game. If we have the entire class of incoming freshmen qualifying for a certain level of scholarship, they will receive it. Now, that is not the case with donor-funded scholarships. So Margaret can speak to that. But as far as merit-based scholarships are concerned, or those upon admission, there's no cap on those.
And we have about 30 different scholarships. Some of them give out multiples, but we gave out 130 scholarships last year, which is, I think, huge for our group. Makes a huge difference in the lives of the students. So even if you see a small listing of scholarships, know that there are multiples and you should still apply. And there are ones out there for you. So there's a good.
And I will say, just in terms of putting together the National Alumni Society's program that we dropped into the virtual ceremonies, out of those 130 students, there's very few that actually have multiple awards. It does happen. I think this past year had a student that had 3. We had another one that had 2. So there are available scholarships, and you're not stretching things thin. So I would say probably just throw things out there, apply, because you just never know. So, and unless we get any other questions, the last question will be, when will I find out if I've been awarded a scholarship? Margaret, we'll start with you.
So ours closed, March 25th. We have selection committees for the majority of them. They will review applications and meet late spring, early summer. So most people will hear during, midsummer, try to let you know as soon as possible. Some of them, the ones in the fall, obviously will be later, but that's the general timeline. We'll let you know as soon as we can. You will be notified when your application is submitted and we have everything you need. And we're always here to answer questions if you're curious, if you want to know how things are going, but that's a general timeline.
Should they be sitting by a phone, Margaret, or are you going to be sending emails?
Emails, uab.edu emails. So make sure you use that in your application.
That's a great point.
Don't use a Yahoo that nobody checks. Use your UAB one because that will be where anything official and important goes.
And Kathleen, when will students find out, especially through BSmart, when are they going to be awarded?
Yes. So merit-based awards from as a result of admissions started rolling out October 1st, and that's the general timeline. October 1st for enrollment in that next fall class. Also, scholarship awards are included. If they're received in time, they are included on all financial aid letters. So financial aid letters for the university started going out February 1st, and anyone that had a scholarship award on file, as in awarded from October 1st to mid-January, the scholarship would appear on their financial aid letter. So it could be the first time they're seeing it. Awards are immediately visible in BSmart, but you do get the fancy congratulatory package about 10 business days after the award is made. So you can see the number, the dollar amount in BSmart, and then you'll get the official award via snail mail. I will also reiterate the checking of email, but I'll make a caveat for incoming freshmen. All of the business for scholarships, admissions, enrollment, that all goes to the email address that you apply to UAB with, not your Blazer ID UAB.edu address. Now, once you attend orientation and you are sort of on into the channel for current students and you register for classes, absolutely, need to be checking that UAB email all the time. But a plug on behalf of my office, it is so important to keep track of what email address you use to apply to college, because that is the email address that we are using to communicate these types of things like awards. Now, for separate scholarships, it depends because, like I said, the deadlines vary, therefore the notifications vary. But the Office of Undergraduate Scholarships really asks for any of our BSmart scholarships to be awarded before May 1, which is not any kind of binding date, but May 1 is the National College Decision deadline. These days, it's just for funsies. We like to celebrate May 1, but it's not a hard deadline. It's just an indicator of our class. So May 1 tends to be that time, or excuse me, prior to May 1 tends to be the time that you will hear about a scholarship award, but that's not hard and fast. It could continue past May 1 depending on the awardee, the awarder. But again, your email address is what you need to be focused on. Whatever you use to apply to the university is what we are going to be using to notify you of said awards. And it's very, very important to keep track with those emails.
And we did have some user participant questions come in. So I'm going to throw this to Margaret first. With COVID, many community participations were very limited to students over the past couple of years. Any tips on searching for scholarships on interests, especially when it comes to the NAS?
That's a good question. It's not as easy to search the NAS ones as unless they're on BSmart. I'm trying to think of some specific ones. There are some, very focused on, this is the school I'm in. If you're an incoming freshman, it's a little more limited on what you can search. I might have to do some digging and follow up tomorrow if that's okay on that one, and think about it in a different way.
Nothing like throwing you to the fire. So Kathleen, we'll follow up that one with you. So with COVID, how can they search through BSmart on interest and interest alone? Can they?
Sure. So I think Margaret's exactly right. You can search on academic interest, and that's going to come up. And some awards have an array of majors that they might be pulling from or might have a priority to award to. So for current students, that would be particularly important. But for incoming freshmen, which of course is who I'm working with on a daily basis, it's a matter of, again, that family meeting where you're listing out your community organizations or your church affiliations and realizing that the work that you've done, no matter if it's virtual or not, can still apply. So we do not have a specific Eagle Scout award. I get that question every year, but we do have awards that are specific to student leadership. So you have to kind of cut through some of the words and figure out, okay, well, they don't have an Eagle Scout scholarship, but let me search for the word leadership, and that it'll pop up, and then you can apply your experience to the more general scholarship description. So I just say kind of broaden your search, be sure to use general words, and then once you get into the scholarship opportunity, try to make those direct connections between the student experience, no matter if it's virtual or not, and then the scholarship opportunity.
I'll open this one up to either of you. Since we have been living in a COVID world, what do we do about community service? Because there are a lot of scholarships that want to see some kind of participation outside of just the classroom. So what amount of service is going to be evaluated, and how do you do that over the last couple of years?
I can speak to that in a somewhat related answer. I am sort of related to the MSAP program, the Early Medical School Acceptance Program, because it's managed through my office along with the School of Medicine. And that question came up numerous times about incoming students that are really wanting to be in the early medical school program, but don't have the desired shadowing experience, which I think is very similar. And my answer to that is we've all been a pandemic, and we are living in a world that's aware of it, right? Not one segment of the population has been going through it, and the rest of us have been just going along our merry way. And so we understand what the limitations that the pandemic have caused also have on the application process. So the School of Medicine, when they're reviewing the MSAP applicants, aren't going to be expecting the same level of shadowing hours or volunteer hours from students that are coming in now as they were 3 years ago. It's just not, it's not feasible. It's not reasonable to expect. So just understanding that there is some grace given because we've all been going through this process, and we know school counselors, admissions staff, we know this is highly, highly unusual. So we are not expecting the same level or breadth of activities when it comes to a scholarship application, because we know what students have been up against in this like online learning environment.
So how does Be Smart's personal statement affect other scholarship opportunities due to it being a general or first look for scholarships that you may have? Is there any tips?
It depends on the scholarship, right? So if the scholarship has not asked any additional information from the student, I'd say it's pretty darn important. Not that you're tailoring your general essay for a specific scholarship, but it's important to put thought and time into it. Now, if the scholarship committee is wanting additional information that's more tailored, they're going to ask for it. So I think it's just important to put a good, strong effort into the essay. And if the third party or the other scholarship is looking for something additional, they're going to be asking for it.
So in a nutshell, deadlines start now through May 1st through the undergraduate admissions.
Right.
With the National Alumni Society, they're at the end of March, so you have some time, and then there are some that leak into the fall. Apply for everything. Yep. Go out there, submit your name, but be original when it comes down to it, because the panel, whoever's selecting, wants to know you, and you have to set yourself apart. One last question, and then we'll let you both go. As it was said that some scholarships are given in priority to certain majors and departments, should a student still apply for these even if they have a different major? Margaret, starting with you.
That's a good question. A lot of ours, we do dean scholarships, which are awarded through the deans of each college. So you would need to be a student in that college. I'm trying to think of some of ours with specific majors that would make a difference. Some are more general, just in engineering. You stumped me again, Greg. I'm trying to think of others. Kathleen, you got anything while I ponder?
I do, yes. So for Be Smart, if it is specific to majors, only those majors that are the information is pulling from Banner, only those majors will appear as viable candidates. So you need to be looking for scholarship opportunities that are not specific to a major, if that's what you're looking for. But those that are major specific from Be Smart, they are pulling your student information directly from Banner. Now, outside scholarships, absolutely apply. See if it sticks, right? Maybe the parameters are narrow, but the scholarship committee is willing to widen them, to include, I'm not sure, like psychology and sociology instead of just the hard sciences, right? Like there's some space for that, but you have to be aware of what system is in use. And so for Be Smart, it is a hard pull for the major that the student has on file. But for outside scholarships, I'm sure there is flexibility.
Fantastic information from both of you throughout this last almost hour that we've spent for searching and applying for scholarships at UAB. Kathleen, Margaret, thank you so much for being a part of it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just a heads up to those viewing, a recording of tonight's webinar will be made available online starting tomorrow. Meanwhile, be sure to join us at other upcoming webinars on Thursday, March 10th. We will host Budgeting 101. This webinar is part of our Backpacks to Briefcases series, where students and alumni can earn credit toward an evergreen certificate. Legacy Credit Union's Gina Kennedy will explore basic budgeting credit, and goal setting. Then on Wednesday, April 6th, we'll celebrate National Poetry Month with Poetry is a Physical Act. Discover 7 ways poems reach a reader with Chris Pappas, co-founder of the U.S. Poetry Company and USPOCO Books. On Tuesday, April 12th, learn what your diet should look like in order to protect and maintain your cognitive function. Diet and Brain Health will feature Dr. Suzanne Judd, director of the Lister Hill Center for Health Policy. And on Thursday, May 19th, Joke It Up as part of Comedy Just Say Yes. Dr. Kevin Fontaine, professor and chair for the School of Public Health, will make sense of what makes something humorous and why laughing makes us feel better. You can check out all of our events at alumni.uab.edu/events. Let us help you get through your day or your commute. Listen into the UAB Green and Told podcast. New episodes are released every other week and feature members of the UAB community. Meet one of the first persons to put the Blaze mascot on, meet an Army general, and discover why alumni chose their career paths they took. And listen back to episode 18 from April 27th, 2020, where we talk with Kathleen Stallings about recruiting Blazers. Download the podcast on Spotify and the Apple Podcast app or visit our website. And be sure to stay on top of all things alumni on social media. You can look us up by searching UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On LinkedIn, just search Alumni Career Community. As we close tonight, I would like to encourage you to give us feedback. We want to know what you're doing or how we're doing and what we can do better. Let us know. Scan the QR code or visit alumni.uab.edu/feedback to complete a brief survey. I'm going to go ahead and keep that QR code up just for a minute or so once I'm done here. So once again, thanks for joining us for tonight's webinar with Kathleen Stallings and Margaret Whiteside. Have a great evening, and as always, go Blazers.